evening, everyone. Welcome. Thank you all for being here. I'd like to call our special meeting of the Town Planning and Zoning Commission to order. Today is Tuesday, May 20th at 7:10 p.m. My name is Robert Klee. I'm the chair of our Woodbridge Town Planning and Zoning Commission. Other members of the commission who are with us here tonight are Andrew Skolnick, Jeff Kennedy, Kathy Hunter, Aaron Hoffman, Ben Cherry, and we believe Paul Schatz may be joining us shortly. Great. Thank you to Chris Sullivan, our town land use analyst and zoning enforcement officer, for your help in organizing our special meeting today. We are in person at the town library. All the other spaces in town have been taken tonight. It is a busy night across town. But nice to see all the members of the public who are here today. Our agenda tonight was available on the town website. Our special meeting tonight primarily concerns our commission's plan of conservation and development. And tonight we will receive and discuss some additional documents from our consultant, SLR International, who's been helping us work on our update to our plan of conservation and development. Robert's here again tonight. And we're going to provide feedback as we work through some of our key documents that support our plan of conservation and development. After we're done with the plan of conservation and development discussion, which will go for at least an hour or so, folks, we will have a continued work session on the Stephen Mason amendment to the zoning regulations regarding the proposal to repeal the amendments to section 3.2 on opportunity housing enacted on December 2nd, 2024. So without further ado, Robert, thank you for our patience with our technology and logistics. So I'll pass it over to you to why don't you sort of set the stage for what we accomplished last time we were together and what we hope to accomplish tonight.
Yes, exactly. Good evening, everyone. For the record, Robert Collins, project manager and professional planner with SLR International Corporation. We are assisting you all with the development of the POCD, as you mentioned. When we had our last meeting, which I believe was April 28th, I believe. You will recall at that meeting we started to go through the draft recommendations, which includes the goals, strategies, and action steps or actions for each one of the theme areas. And during our meeting last time, we made it through theme area 1. Chris, I forwarded to Chris, and she forwarded to you all late last week for you to look at in advance of this meeting, was an updated version of that document with all the goals, strategies, and actions. Theme area 1 was adjusted with all the comments that we talked about. Pretty much everything was cleared up. I guess before we go to theme area 2, I just wanted to ask, was there any follow-up or any, based on any of the edits that you saw in theme area 1, did anybody have any questions or comments or slight adjustments to theme area 1? Also, if you need a paper copy, I have a few if you didn't bring them or you don't have your laptop, so just let me know. What's on the screen also is showing, but I'll, obviously since you're facing this way, I'll just point to something up there if it gets to be like everybody's not sure where we are. That's really just for the benefit of the public. Okay, so any questions or comments in theme area number 1 as a follow-up? No?
So what's in red and otherwise crossed out are the changes that have been made since we last met?
That's correct. Yes, so and then the recommendations are, what was shared at the base recommendations, that aren't in strike through and underline. Those were the recommendations that were presented to the public at the open house, and that were also available online. And then what's in red and strike through were edits that we received from the commissioners, and that we confirmed last week. I'm sorry, several weeks ago.
I didn't have anything. Did anyone else on the commission?
No.
Okay, let's go to number 2.
Okay. Also, in the version that you just received, let me just get to and then theme area 2 is embracing sustainability and resilience. And sorry, I forgot to bring my mouse and it keeps jumping. Sorry. Okay, so theme area 2 is embracing sustainability and resiliency. And there were, in the version that you had last time, there were some additional comments that, but Chris and I worked on those and tried to clean it up so that we could keep the comments, as crisp and clean for you to look at. So in goal number 2.1, letter C, there was the first thing was that there was a comment that we received from a TPZ member, earlier in April that we just need to talk about, and it says, let's see, there was a comment there, but I don't know if it was something that needs to be addressed. Did anybody want to follow up on that, or if it was your comment, do you want to discuss that at all? That's in 2.1.1C.
Sure, I could talk about that. It was my comment, and this was in reference to an ordinance that was developed by DEEP and the Department of Public Health, Connecticut Department of Public Health. And it's an ordinance that requires regular septic inspections. And the idea behind that is that within the ordinance, it was the sewer septic contractors would be approved by the Department of Health, and then there was a computer system set up where they would monitor septic systems. And it's a way of promoting regular inspections and maintenance of septic systems. And it's an ordinance that's adopted by some towns in Connecticut. And I just thought it could be something you might want to think about, or just maybe put it in as, exploring this type of ordinance, because the DEEP and Department of Public Health data did show that regular, maintenance of a septic system was a critical factor in pollution avoidance and properly functioning of systems. So I thought it might be something we may want to think about.
Excuse me. Do you have a specific recommendation for an addition that might be helpful for them to understand? Or do you think that that might just be something that would come under when the TPZ moves forward with updating the town zoning and subdivision regulations sometime during the next 10 years? Is that just something that could be discussed in more detail at that time?
I think this probably even goes beyond the subdivision regulations, and I just thought we could just have a consideration of an ordinance that would, or explore consideration ordinance that would require regular inspection and maintenance of septic systems.
Other thoughts?
It's just an idea.
Yeah. It could be added as an action step to, consider, kind of like what you read there, consider regulations for on-site sewer disposal systems, regular inspections to prevent environmental degradation, following DEEP guidelines or something like that. Is that something any other commissioners are interested in possibly adding, or do you want to think about that?
I think if it were to be added, some semblance of that, it should be a separate subparagraph, J, rather than added to C.
Yeah, I think that's what we were thinking, that it would be like its own separate action step.
And I guess my question is, we are a town with a whole lot of septic systems. I am in favor of having some recognition that there are best practices in septic system maintenance and/or inspections, etc. I don't know, there's always a question here, Robert, for you, of how specifically, fine grained we need to get into these versus, just the broad recognition that septic systems are used by a large majority of houses in our town. We need to follow best practices, look to the deep end, the regional health authorities for those best practices.
Right.
I don't know if that's enough or.
Yeah, I think that's a start. I mean, that's what I was looking, just some recognition that there should be some regular inspection and maintenance, or exploring that.
I don't know if you want us, or I can check into the MS4 program, because as part of that, there's always a report on how many failures of septic systems there has been, and I'm just not that from recalling that section that much, so I can get the verbiage from there and share that with you, just to see what's, because some of the MS4 has things where they're supposed to be educating the public on different stuff. So there may be something in there, I'm not sure. So if you want, I'll double check on that, and then we can circle back to that one.
I think letter B covers it, right? It's kind of broad. Like, you're bringing up good points, but letter B sort of, coordinate programs and efforts to maintain and enhance water quality.
Yeah, I just thought this was more specific.
Well, and also, Jeff, that letter B is on water and surface water, drinking water. This is on
Right.
septic, so like figuring out to make sure that, yes, it doesn't impact those things negatively. I think it could have a separate J on, aspire to adopt best practices
Your septic system is following deep
and
regulations or other
And
appropriate
regional health.
entities or something like that.
because I think the
Yeah.
local health department is also the main regulatory body. for
Right.
septic.
And there is, as Chris was starting to allude to, there is a couple of other areas too, like with the discussions about the MS4 permitting and reporting, and then also the discussion about the building department staff coordinating septic, new septic system approvals as they're required with the health department as well as other entities. And I think, with your initial question, as we kind of talked about, just to kind of continue to, I think, when it's something that's directly under the control of the TPZ, it probably is good. And if you know that it's something that is pending, it's good to be as specific as possible so that you're giving your real specific guidance. Otherwise, it's probably following like more policy type of things, and you might want to, as you were indicating, you might want to be, if it's not something directly under your control, you might want to be more general, so that as that subject might evolve or change, sometimes it has, I'm hesitant to say like follow the 2013 state stormwater, water utility or stormwater regulations manual, because that date, it changes, and so you probably want to just mention it or as amended or something like that. And you also don't know what subjects might come up in the future, so that's why we're trying to cover as many bases as possible. But I don't think it's, putting this new letter J in and then fine tuning it a little bit, I don't think is problematic. As long as everybody else is
Fine.
Yeah, that's fine.
Do you have enough guidance to draft that?
I think so. I think Chris is taking notes too, but I think what we said at the very end.
I did want to note that 2.1.1C on the low impact regulations, best management practices,
Right.
I think it's repeated. Where did I see it?
That is probably true, that sometimes a recommendation is repeated as long as it's in like a different area, because it's,
I mean, 2.1.4, although it's update and expand low impact. So that's on page 10. No, it's the exact same language. So here's on protecting and enhancing water quality, water resources and air quality. And there it's on
it's coming under green technology.
green technology and low impact development.
So it can, that's why sometimes we do put them like a similar one or the same one in, but it's got a slightly different focus.
Okay, I just was noting that I saw it twice.
Okay, if there's no other conversation on that, the next one down is on letter E. Under 2.1.1, we got some edits. That this is actually about the MS4 permitting. I think this is new language that we actually got from town staff since we last talked, so we incorporated it. So it's just, we're just trying to confirm whether you're okay with it since it's new language.
Looks
Looks
Yeah.
fine.
Okay. Let's see, if there's no more questions or comments on that area, the next comment down, or the next area that's highlighted in red with the changes that we received is on page 9. And you'll see at the bottom, or in the middle of the page, under 2.1.2, letter J was added. This is that, similar to what we talked about in theme area 1, about the fact that the country club property is still evolving, and we're not trying to establish different recommendations for that within the POCD. We're trying to follow guidance that comes out of that study. And right now, we have this, language that's kind of where it stands right now. But again, it's a similar recommendation or action step that's in multiple locations as it kind of relates to the different things that the country club property would be involved with. And this is just like a parking space right now as we continue to move towards adoption and see if that would change. And we're also coordinating that with the Board of Selectmen who are leading that effort. Okay? So we'll circle back to that when we get back to the final draft.
And that language is the same language we've used
In the three different places where this shows up, it's the same language that talks about balancing rec development, conservation, recreation with the goals to preserve, enhance, and transform.
Robert, in case we don't get to it, so it looks like the numbering schema it just gets off here. We go from 2.1.2 to 2.1.2.
There are two 2.1.2s.
So there's the difference there.
Yeah, 2.1.2 and 2.1.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for pointing that out. We tried, it's like your eyes play little tricks on
Yeah,
you.
it's mine.
That's, I'll make a note of that, and then I'll double check to make sure that nothing, but I'm sure it's probably just a typo. So we'll have to change all the way down to
Yeah, got it.
2.1 will be
Got it.
5 and 6. So thanks a lot, appreciate that. Also, in that one, that's actually the duplicate for 2.12. This was a question, this was something that was moved forward, kind of from the conversation with the Conservation Commission, but also with the previous plan. We're not sure that if there's much difference between A and B. So we wanted to ask you if you felt that whether B was kind of covered under A, or whether you wanted to kind of have that out. And the reason why that is, it says protect endangered and vulnerable species of concerns. And then the second one says ensure development will not endanger species identified in the database. So if you're protecting them in the first one, you're kind of implying the same thing.
Agreed.
Obviously, the second one could be used instead, but if you feel that they're duplicate, do you have a preference over whether we keep A or B?
Ensure is a pretty strong word.
I think keep A, ditch B.
I agree.
Okay. Do others agree?
Yes,
And A is broader.
yes.
Yes.
And they both reference the Connecticut Natural Diversity Database, so. Okay, thanks for confirming that. Okay, the next, if we drop down to the next page, the next question that we have is under 2.1.4, which is actually 0.5. The one about, again, we just talked about the repeat of letter A. But this one is a letter C that was recommended. Somebody had recommended that promote adopting green building standards, incorporating renewable energy, and using sustainable materials and construction methods for housing development. This was a recommendation that we received from TPZ Commissioner, so if this is your comment and you want to expand on it, please do. If not, others, if you feel, if you're in favor or not in favor, just let it, please respond.
Is this the one that you identified as being duplicative, Mr. Chairman?
No,
That was it.
that was the low impact development. Yeah, I'm fine with the addition.
It's fine.
Fine.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, so we'll keep that. Okay, the comment that we have for the next one, that's 2.1.5, which will be 6. Letter A, right now, it's just a simple statement that says adopt a dark skies ordinance to minimize lighting impacts with town and local environment. Just wanted to let you know from my perspective is that Lights Out Connecticut, which is a group, has prepared a model regulation for dark skies zoning in Connecticut that could be mentioned or used as a guide when you potentially get around to doing that. So we could leave the recommendation as it is, or we could say something like adopt a dark skies ordinance, that models the Lights Out Connecticut draft model or something like that.
I think it's better not to be so specific in case
Right.
we model it on something else.
And I would put consider adopting.
Okay. So we'll just add the word consider, but then not mention any specifics.
Everyone okay with that?
Does that sound okay?
It considers too, sorry, Commissioner Kennedy, I'm not trying to be critical. Considers kind of squishy.
That's why I picked it.
Yeah. I would say maybe evaluate the impact of adopting a dark skies ordinance or something like that.
Fine.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Does that sound okay?
that's fine,
Yeah.
yeah.
Consideration can be dispatched with pretty quickly.
Okay, got it. Okay, the next one is really where we have kind of the most comments or potential discussion points for this particular theme. And that is that, first of all, right in the goal, which is promote, this is for goal 2.2, promote social sustainability and equity. Right off the bat, we received a comment or an edit from Commissioner that that we actually adjusted this in the vision statement, and that we were trying to be a little bit more sensitive about using the word equity, potentially maybe using a different word or not using that in this particular case in this location. So because we eliminated it in the, or adjusted it, I should say, in the community vision statement, wanted to know if, we should eliminate it here. And then, again, we can have discussion, and then maybe the commissioner that recommended this can also maybe chime in a little bit.
How did we adjust it in the vision statement?
Well, we talked about that at the beginning of the last meeting, and let me see if I have my notes here. What we had, let's see, in the overall vision statement, before it said Woodbridge envisions a future where growth is pursued in a responsible manner, and then it said comma, and then equity, and then sustainability and resilience are at the forefront of the community. So how we changed it last time is we took out the word equity, and it now says Woodbridge envisions a future where growth is pursued in a responsible manner, where housing choices, sustainability, and resilience are at the forefront of communities' decision-making. And then in theme area 1, it said, it used to say economic development, diverse, variable housing, or I'm sorry, it said diverse and equitable housing opportunities, and we changed it to just say economic development, diverse housing opportunities. Any thoughts one way or the other?
I like the change. I think I was the one that said, I didn't think it belonged in the document.
Okay.
Alternate words might be fairness or resilience.
What exactly is social sustainability, by the way?
So sustainability is obviously maintaining sorry, I wasn't prepared to answer that.
That's why I'm asking it, I honestly
Yeah,
don't know what
it's
it means.
It's in there. I mean, like, sustainability is kind of like, make sure that you are, you know, being mindful of future generations and their, you know, that you're not tapping into and using up all of the resources or opportunities. And so social sustainability would mean that you're promoting, it's kind of promoting equality so that there's kind of an even playing field, and that that's going to be maintained in the future by having like a good balance, a mix of resources as well as opportunities and things like that. And that the opportunities are broad, from everything from economic, housing, businesses, recreation, those types of things.
What if we took some words of sustainable CT and said, like, promote social sustainability to build a more inclusive, efficient, vibrant town? That's some wordage from sustainable CT.
I mean, would that be a goal? Is that what you're saying?
For a goal, yes.
Can you repeat that, Kathy?
Promote social sustainability to build a more inclusive, efficient, and vibrant town.
Alternately, I mean, what if we left it just maybe a little bit more broad and said, promote sustainable land use and development?
I like that.
Kind of,
Broad and simple.
Although it does, so here's the challenge. Our theme area here is embracing sustainability and resiliency broadly. Our first goal is about environmental sustainability and conservation, which does get at, I think, a lot of what you're just talking about. The other elements of sustainability that Robert was alluding to is that sustainability can be viewed as a multifaceted concept that has both environmental aspects, social and economic aspects, equity and justice aspects, and that holistic view of sustainability is kind of covered in that theme. We're embracing sustainability and resiliency. Resiliency added in the sort of climate challenges we face, and which we get to in some of the later goals here. So again, what I'm struggling with is making sure that our goal 2.1 and 2.2 aren't getting subsumed in one another, and that there's something in each of those buckets.
Yes. Yeah, that's actually a very good point.
In earlier notations, you know, versions of this document and to you, I think, you know, we had kind of relayed to you that, you know, we were struggling a little bit with this particular goal. It's not one that we were able to pull information from, like, say, for instance, from your existing plan, or that this specific thing about maybe social equity is not something that is necessarily always or recently included in, like, other POCDs that we worked on. So therefore, we were kind of wanting to look more towards you all to kind of see like what types of things did you have envisioned for this particular goal. Once we have some ideas, and we did lay out a few, we knew that there could be something related to food and accessibility to food, because that is one that we knew that it comes up a lot with that social sustainability idea when we did a little bit of research. And then also we knew that just education and promoting and supporting sustainable ideas and practices, which kind of ties into that sustainable CT. But beyond that, we just didn't want to take it too far without talking with you, since it's not something that's in your existing plan, and it's not something that, it's important, and it's a good one for a PUC, but it's not one that is easily inserted without like a lot of discussion.
This will be a little painful, but maybe we could take action items A under goal 2.2 and strategy 2.2.2 and just add it as additional under goal 2.1.
The natural water resources.
Goal 2.1 embrace environmental, and maybe like take all of that and put that there. Well, I don't know how you feel about that, Mr. Chairman. I might be stepping on something.
No, I mean, this is the question which you're asking us, is you've tried to put some things into this goal 2.2 on social sustainability. And one could read, particularly in 2.2.2, most of those action items, I could find them a different home in one of our other sort of goals. So what is distinctive about this social sustainability goal? Which, Kathy, by the way, I like the sustainable CT, both it's referenced here and their overarching, to the extent they have a definition or what they consider under their buckets, because sustainable CT, for those of you who don't know, is a statewide organization built on Sustainable New Jersey and a few other sort of regional models where they sort of rank and rate municipalities according to, I'm making this up, 100 different criteria.
Actually, I have the correct.
Yeah. So what ones do they tend to put in this bucket as social versus other forms of sustainability?
Robert, just put that in there. That's a joke.
Because they, to me, they have thriving economies, they have vibrant creative cultural ecosystems, they have inclusive engagement, community, communication, education, health and wellness opportunities. To me, those might be the types of things that fall into this social budget bucket that aren't natural resource conservation, sort of classist environmental sustainability, and not clean energy deployment and electric vehicle deployment and other sorts of things. So the social, cultural, health and well-being types of things.
Yeah, I mean, we do have that in strategy 2.2.2G, continue to participate in sustainable CT.
Yeah, but to me, that, I think the value is actually sort of highlighting,
Right.
instead of this list where I could find places for half of them in other parts, but to pull out things like their arts and culture, the thriving local economies, so social and economic sustainability might be again part of this broader category in the spirit of sustainability, which means thriving business center in town that's got, long-standing and sort of businesses that are open to business development and a vibrant sort of meeting place and for people to enjoy.
That's why I suggested the social sustainability in conjunction with a more inclusive, efficient, and vibrant town, because that all kind of leads to that.
I mean, in the, I was just gonna mention that in the final plan, like each one of the goals will have like a little bit of a description, like once we know what your final desire is for the strategies and action steps. Right now, we do have a little bit of a write-up underneath, in this particular document, under the theme area, we have like an initial discussion. But each one of the goals will also have a little bit of a discussion. And I think in that particular write-up, which you will be reviewing with the final draft, we will be kind of clarifying a little bit more about, what sustainability is from your perspective based on your final recommendations, and some of the stuff from Sustainable CT and, that can be woven in. I think that when we were dividing this up as far as the two different goals underneath the theme area, the first, and because it's sustainability, the first one is really like environmental sustainability, which is covering the Sustainable CT environmental kind of categories. The second one is really kind of a catch-all that, was social, and what our assumption was that you were talking about, as I was trying to explain before, but reading that kind of clarified a little bit more, where you kind of had things about like accessibility to food, accessibility to health and being well, economic opportunities and things like that. Now, some of those things are cross-referenced in other areas. Obviously we have a whole goal and section about economic development with the downtown, and there's some of that is repeated, but this is really focused on the people part rather than like, that's more focused on the business part. So this is like the people part of it. So,
But to me, it's helping us sort of define sustainability a little more broadly. That includes a vibrant business sector, a vibrant arts and cultural sector, a vibrant sort of health and sort of supports for our community. So I think that does fit nicely into this spot, but we need some work to get those different than what are currently the action items in 2.2.2. I do like a lot of the action items though in 2.2. I don't want to delete them. I would think they could easily be moved if they're not already in other parts.
right, but I guess I'm suggesting that, based on what we're hearing, is that it sounds like maybe we do promote social sustainability for town residents or something simple without making it too complex, but then the write-up underneath would kind of clarify.
Oh, in just the title of the goal.
Yeah.
Keeping it simple.
Well, but taking out the word equity, just focusing more on sustainability, since sustainability, which will be described below, will kind of
That's fine.
imply-
Promote social sustainability could be goal 2.2, period.
Yeah.
And then underneath it, bring in like the descriptor from, that Kathy shared from Sustainable CT of what that means to us. Then I was already down in strategy 2.2.2 where I would,
Right. This one has a lot of good ones, and again, it's based on like trying to promote, educate, and support those ideas and practices. Computer does that, but it'll come back up in a second. But do you want to add something related to other areas besides
arts and
food?
culture. Health and well-being. Any others? I think you already have that sort of education outreach that's already in one of these.
Do you think that, would there be a separate, sorry. Would there be a separate strategy for each one of those things, or do you think like?
I think for arts and culture, a separate one, and for health and well-being, I think you already have the educate, promote, and support,
Right.
which I think would cover, and then a sustainable and vibrant business/economic community, which I know those will be also in other places, but we apparently do that a lot in this document, so that's okay.
Okay. Well, we'll take a stab at that. We might only have like one action item underneath it that would
Yeah.
kind of repeat it, but we'll start there, and then that might spur some
Right.
ideas. But for the next version, we'll add, we'll probably keep the educate one to be the very last one. So we'll add like a new 2.2.2, which is about arts and cultures and sustainability. Then we'll add a 2.2.3 that's about health and well-being. And then a 2.2.4, which is more about economic development, economic well-being.
And then that last
And then
one is the
2.2.5 would be that
educate, engagement, promotion.
promotion, all that, yeah.
Sure.
Okay, good, well, thanks for
Is that okay?
discussing
That sounds
those.
good.
Yeah.
And I'll look at that, I'm familiar with their website, but we'll take a look at Sustainable CT, and we'll kind of use some of that for some guidance. Okay?
Good.
Okay, good, thanks. Let's see where our next question is.
Robert, for goal 2.3, I did send out some information to you and Chair Clay, because I had attended the SCROG-sponsored data workshop on the climate planning workshop. And they had, they came up with a comprehensive climate action plan and municipal emissions reduction playbook. And again, it was also sponsored by, as well as some SLR, some of your team members were there and coming up with this emissions, municipal emissions reduction playbook that was created for each town. And I just thought it was, and we talked about this briefly last meeting, and it's true that some of those strategies were already in here, based on other input. But I just thought that there was the fact that it was something that Scribe was working on with the region, and we're trying to promote regional planning, that it might be something that's worth just mentioning as a strategy to evaluate, implement as appropriate strategies in the municipal emissions reduction playbook as part of the comprehensive climate action plan, and maybe include that as an appendix, because they had some, good strategies in there, some of which are mentioned in part, but there's some that aren't in here, and I just thought it would be good to include that.
Well, obviously, we need to get others to kind of chime in. I think, I do think that, again, if there was something specific in there that you wanted to carve out, you'd have to kind of let me know that specifically, since that document is pretty comprehensive, and some things may not be completely appropriate for Woodbridge, but at the
Well,
same
this is
time.
specific for Woodbridge. I mean, they went through all the POCDs and different plans, and they created a playbook for each town in the Scrog area. So this is a playbook that's specific to Woodbridge.
Right. Well, I think that mentioning it because it exists, I mean, is it in final format, and has it been adopted by them, by Scrog?
I got the sense that it was, because they had a informational session on it.
Because I think basically, instead of being its own strategy, because there really wouldn't be any action steps under it, I really think that it probably would be best if it's maybe added to
Right, that's what I'm saying.
2.3.1, like letter F.
Right.
And it could say, again, like what was your language that you said?
I have evaluate and implement as appropriate strategies in the municipal emissions reduction playbook as part of the region's comprehensive climate action plan.
Okay.
So in some ways, it's similar language to what we currently have in 2.3.2 on the regional municipal hazard mitigation plan. So again, it's calling out a plan that has been done at the regional level that we should look to as appropriate implement. But I agree with the its own letter F under this.
Yeah.
And this 2.3.1 is on resilience, but is that plan, and I haven't had a chance to look more closely at it, but is it just resilience or is it other things?
No, there's other things that included, it was strategies in the areas of like energy efficient buildings, electricity production, consumption, mobility, transportation, waste management, as well as increasing workforce capacity and training initiatives around green jobs. I mean, there are strategies that are already address that, but there's also some strategies that aren't addressed. So that's why I just thought, including that in there as a way of promoting regional collaboration. Since they did, spend resources, they got a grant and they completed this for the towns, we should, at least, consider it.
So an alternative would be to make it, its own strategy 2.4.5 and have it as a standalone strategy and there's some good language there, to evaluate and implement.
Right, it's just that a lot of the strategies are already incorporated in some of the recommendations that are
Right, but
written.
if it's its own thing, it's more of a catch-all that makes sure that we're looking at this plan, reviewing it,
Okay.
and seeing where all the other strategies align with
Gotcha, okay, I get it.
what the region has suggested for us to do. Instead of, the other option would be to repeat it as
Yeah.
in each of the prior 4 sub-strategies.
That works. Do you need the language again, Robert?
Well, I guess so you're talking about adding it as a goal 2.5? Is that what you're saying?
No, a strategy
Strategy.
2.4.5, still under the goal of,
Oh, so, okay, because
Oh,
originally we
sorry.
were talking about under 3, because I think that
I'm
it
sorry,
kind of
I meant
covers...
under, I scrolled too far. I meant it under 2.3.3 then.
Okay, because some of the subjects that she talked about are covered by goal 2.4,
Yeah.
because there is stuff in there about energy, renewable energy, energy conservation, and recycling.
Yeah.
So the document seems to kind of cover subjects that are both in goal 2.3 and 2.4.
So then maybe its goal is to, ensure Woodbridge's efforts are aligned with regional efforts on energy conservation. and
Or we-
resources.
or we-
I'm just trying to figure out the right place to put it so it speaks to all these things that are happening.
It might be better, in my opinion, if it's added like in just a couple places in both 2.3 and 2.4, that just kind of say, the language that she said, but then you give the focus area like for, related to energy
So
conservation.
it's a strategy in 2.3.3 on the topics that are in 2.3, and it's a strategy in 2.4 on the topics that are in goal 2.4.
Right, okay.
Did that make any sense whatsoever?
When I read it out, I'm sure it will.
I
I
mean,
see what you're trying to do.
The
I see what
spirit
you're
is
trying-
right,
I
because
see what you're
it's
saying.
the regional aspect that they will,
Right.
monitor this and see how we progress on this and.
Can you, because I'm not sure if Chris captured all that either, because it was a lot, but rather than
Can you
repeating
just
it,
email it?
can you email it? Yeah.
I would have, sure.
And then we'll adjust it to fit under each one of those 2 spots. But that would be great. Okay? Okay, anything else under goal 2.3? Because we didn't have any other comments from anybody. 2.4, we didn't receive any comments except for under 2.4.2, under promote energy conservation. Letter C.
Yep.
This was something that was in the existing POCD. And I know we talked about it with town staff, but it could be something that's specific because this one was targeting United Illuminating. But I was thinking that maybe we could turn this into more generic that says, coordinate with town energy suppliers to promote energy conservation and share information with town residents on energy conservation.
Sounds good.
So everybody's okay with that? Does it change? Okay. Okay, that wraps up theme area 2.
if there's no other comments on that, on the rest of that, okay? So then we go to theme area 3, which is promoting a welcoming community. And let's see, we have a initial comment, and this is under strategy 3.1.2, which is talking about engaging civic, encouraging civic engagement and informative communication. And then we received some edits from TPZ members. You can see the edits there, and then there was also a comment that was added. Does anybody have any adjustments, or are you okay with the edits? I think what was happening here is it was just making it broader, rather than being just specific to the Planning and Zoning Commission. Any other thoughts? Okay, I guess hearing none, we'll go ahead and make that adjustment.
Yeah, I'm in favor of the language and the adding it on, and also what it needs.
Go ahead,
I think it's a good idea.
just to make it
He
broader.
likes it.
I like it.
Oh, you like it?
Yes.
Okay.
It's okay for TPZ to speak to the Board of Selectmen or the Finance Committee Board.
Maybe,
or-
yeah, maybe just.
I don't know, maybe.
Maybe the word with could be changed to between, and the word the retain, because A says provide opportunities for civic participation at all levels of the town government. That to me sounds like we encourage civic participation from the members of the town at all levels of town government. And then
Be redundant, yeah.
if in B we're saying specifically we'd like the committees and commissions to speak more, to collaborate more, maybe we could say, provide and encourage, I'm not sure what continue to provide active civic participation, provide opportunities. We don't provide civic participation. So maybe continue to encourage active collaboration between the town's committees and commissions. Is that what we're really trying to say? So maybe continue to encourage active collaboration between the town's committees and commissions. I think that just complements A.
I think that's good, just like that.
Okay, that sounds good. Others
Yep.
agree?
Of course, only within the context of scheduled and noticed meetings.
All properly noticed, et cetera, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Do we
I'm
need- do
not
we-
a lawyer, so I don't always remember.
Like, do we need to add a clause that says, consistent with town regulations?
Well, it's
Something like that.
state
That's
law.
Yes, they all.
Okay. Consistent with Connecticut state law. Do we need to add that clause?
I think it's implied.
Okay.
But it's okay to add two if you want.
Everything we do has to be consistent with state law, right?
Everything.
Everything. So,
I think the one thing you have to be careful of is that, is this going to encourage other committees and commissions to feel that, oh, that means that they should have a seat at the table at our deliberations of the things we're doing as a TPZ, which they don't. So,
Nor do we have a seat at their
Correct.
deliberations of those commissions.
Is collaboration stronger than you want it to be?
I'm okay with collaboration, but
All I'm saying is don't have those discussions privately.
Sure, absolutely. That's it.
right.
It does just say, it says encourage, it doesn't say,
Don't clandestinely conduct collaboration.
I'm totally cool with that.
Not gonna do that. Okay.
All right.
Okay. Okay, if there was nothing
I
else there.
have a question on E. Was the neighborhood pride teams, is that a holdover from the 2015?
No, that was actually, that was something that the first selectman gave us.
Okay. Because it was from 2015, I would think we had,
Was
that
an
that
idea.
hadn't that hadn't happened, so
Right.
if it's new.
But it was something that he was wanting to, I guess, start up again.
Okay.
Okay, under goal 3.2, first off, I have some question for you, is that, and this is for letter B under 3.2.1. So, in evaluating the existing plan, there were, the existing plan is divided up into a whole bunch of different action plans for different types of subjects. And in the, under community service and specifically under human services department, there were a series of very specific action steps. And then when we talked with the human services department, they gave us updates. And so we incorporated those updates into these sub-bullet points under B. But when we got to the end of the document, and now we're reviewing it with you, we realized that we don't really have these kind of sub-points like this for in other situations. I mean, we do kind of talk about it with like town facilities, but not so much services.
Is that problematic?
It's not problematic, but we just wanted to point it out. We're okay with having them called out, but if we wanted it to be your call, is if it is talked about in detail in the text of the document. But I just wanted to find out if you were okay with these being sub-bullets specifically for the senior and social work services, and then it also is under things for the youth. One of the reasons why this came up is because one of the commissioners made a comment about under letter E, specifically wanting to know about the juvenile review board. And does the juvenile review board do, and is this something that belongs in the POCD? That's kind of what brought us back to why I wanted to explain that, is that it does, I mean, it's a unique thing to the town, and you can decide whether you want to have those specifics. The Human Services Department would have to expand more clearly on exactly what the Juvenile Review Board is, if you wanted to know. That's why I wanted to mention that these items were kind of carryovers, but updated from the existing POCD, but they are unique to this social services aspect of the town.
I did question the juvenile review board only because when I looked at it, it seemed like something that was more appropriate for like a Department of Education type document and not a POCD. So I just wasn't feeling where that particular point belonged. But I think in terms of B, I think listing these type of services, I think that's fine. But the juvenile review board, I just wasn't feeling it in terms of a POCD. I thought that's more of a...
Yeah, I mean, all of these, I'm assuming that the Human Services Department and Director has these in other documents. But when we had our conversations, and Chris, if you recall, just chime in too. But I think we were, she was wanting to make sure that, because we also talked about anything that she might need to have a grant for, or something like that. We wanted to make sure that it was possibly included, or something that she might need to help, get supplement other documents that she has, like you were saying, like an education plan or something like that. It shouldn't be solely in the POCD, but it's kind of like consistently added to the POCD. We could circle back to her for more information if you want, but if we got rid of that one, it would, we'd have to clarify, I feel like we either need to leave them all as she gave them, or we need to eliminate them all.
But a third option is to combine those first two bullets, since they both seem to be related to the Bethany Orange Woodbridge towns
Okay.
and the sort of regional school district operations. So again, what you're probably hearing, and then thank you, Kathy, for flagging this. It could be a wonderful program. I have no idea what it is. It feels a little sort of strange, and is there a more generic way to say under this general, yeah, we support youth services, you know, in the broader community, and that means continuing to support the efforts of the Bethany Orange Woodbridge School District in providing youth services, which may include, among other things, X, Y, and Z. And then I do like our, you know, youth development programs and job banks and other things. But that one seemed at the edge of
Yeah.
what I could reasonably understand by just reading it in the plain language.
I mean, I think that's a good suggestion. I mean, again, we were just trying to go with what we received from them, but I do, and then I think we separated them because the one was like kind of ongoing and the second one was kind of like something new. But I do think that your suggestion that might just collapse those two by, you know, it says continue to meet and coordinate on those and then say on such things as the possible development of a juvenile review board or other appropriate things.
Just having that be a little more generic about supporting that Bethany Orange Woodbridge, the regional school district efforts, which could include X, Y, and Z.
Okay, I think that's a good solution, if others feel comfortable with that.
Would you just spell out Bethany Orange Woodbridge?
Wow.
The first
Instead of
time?
bow.
It took me a while to figure out what it is.
Yeah,
Wow.
or, you know, if you want to use the abbreviation, just spell it out once and put a parenthetical
That
place.
is-
It took me a
that is
minute.
good policy.
Board of what? Yeah.
I wasn't completely sure on that either, because that's just what she gave us, but it's a point that needed to be expanded on. Okay?
Robert, I did want to bring out in strategy 3.2.2, maintain enhanced town buildings and facilities. I think that should read, prepare a review of all town-owned buildings and facilities. Because you have a review of all town-owned properties, and I think that's just a typo.
Where are you looking at? I'm sorry, I
Where?
wasn't.
We're not there,
Yeah,
we're
two.
not there yet. The bottom, bottom of 14. Oh, I thought we were done with that part.
Okay, so you're saying 3.2.2? Is it in which, it's in A?
A, right, you have, prepare a review of all town-owned properties. Should that not read a review of all town-owned buildings and facilities? Because I think of town-owned properties
I
as.
think we were just trying not to repeat exactly what was in the strategy, but you're suggesting that properties should be clarified to be buildings and facilities?
Yeah, because I automatically went to town-owned properties as in Coopop and those type of town-owned properties as opposed to.
Again, this was language that we received from that group, and I think that's how they phrased it, but I think, again, a little wordsmithing is not a problem, if that's better, makes more clarification for you. Do others feel the same as that change properties to buildings and facilities? Is that okay? Okay.
I think, I mean, it's something that they've already done in the last 6 months.
I mean, our understanding when we talked with them back in the beginning, a couple months ago, was that it was, you know, ongoing and not complete. But it may be ongoing, you know.
But
they
that is a
updated it 5
review
years from now.
of the more encompassing term properties.
Yeah, right, that should be the strategy then.
So you're saying that properties should be in the strategy?
Right.
I'm saying that properties is appropriately there, that word.
In the action step,
Yeah.
rather than
So,
buildings and facilities?
Yeah, we're trying to make a distinction. Coopop did a review of the land and ownership and title. They weren't looking at the buildings.
No, right.
Well, some had buildings on them, but it was a review of potential
So
uses
yeah.
of town-owned properties.
So if 3.2.2 strategy is maintain and enhance town properties, action item A is to do a review of the properties, action item B can be review buildings and facilities for their maintenance, upkeep, other sorts of things. I don't know, is that a distinction worth making or no?
Well, to me, it just, I thought originally was a mistake that I meant to say town-owned property, but I don't see a review of town-owned properties. I'm thinking of properties that the town owns that are to be developed, and that's under maintain and enhance town buildings and facilities. I mean, to me, it just didn't,
You know, obviously that committee would have to clarify, but I don't think that their review, from what we understand, is not necessarily to, I mean, it's just to have a full, it's like to have an inventory.
right.
And that inventory might point to something that might need to be developed or something like that, but that's not the sole purpose of their inventory. And then B through J talk about specific buildings, but there's different types of things, so that's why there's not, you know, they're all, you know, the first one happens to be about properties, but the, you know, the other ones talk about specific things for specific buildings.
Okay. I just didn't see A fitting under strategy 3.2.2. Talking about physical buildings and facilities.
Then do we add strategy 3.2.2, maintain and enhance town properties, comma, buildings, comma,
Yeah.
facilities?
That's what I would do.
Yeah.
And then leave it.
We could do that.
And I
Okay.
know
And we just have properties.
Yeah. I get your point.
Yeah.
Which is obvious, yeah. Yeah, I would put the word properties up there.
In the strategy 3.2.2.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Great. Everyone okay with that?
yes.
Yep,
Okay, further down on this one, as we kind of already started talking here, we did cross out letter D initially because that was a mispull from the town capital improvement plan. It was clarified by town administration, so they got renumbered, but then also town administration added letter G for your consideration. I'm sorry, letter J.
Before we get there, Robert, just briefly, B is just cumbersome. It looks like a sentence that was just edited a couple times, and it just doesn't make sense grammatically. Maybe you could say, update the ADA transition plan to ensure all town buildings and outdoor spaces implement needed accessibility improvements to meet current ADA compliance. It just needs a big edit
It
there.
needs 3 less words.
Right.
Okay, can you just say that one more time?
Yeah, I think
That was good. Whatever you said.
what we're trying to do is get to meeting current ADA compliance. And so I would say, update the ADA transition plan to ensure all town buildings and outdoor spaces implement needed accessibility improvements to meet current ADA compliance.
I like it.
Listen, okay.
Okay, yep. Okay, that's good.
Thank
And
you.
that's something else we received from the Human Services Department, so I think that's a good interpretation. Okay, anything else on this one, or what, any thoughts about letter J?
J is what we already changed, right?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Why was J added?
We received that from town administration. Or maybe that was from a commissioner, I forget, actually.
I guess I'm just asking, is this something new since we last met? Or was it something discussed when we last met and added as a,
No, we
Product
didn't,
of that?
we didn't talk about this when we met last. This was just added since we had the community open house.
I'm fine with it.
I think, did a commissioner supply this one? Does anybody recall?
No. Just from SLR or the town?
For selectmen, maybe?
I think it's exploring
Yeah.
is fine. We should be
Yeah.
exploring public sewer expansions in a number of places.
If the word development is causing confusion, it could just say it could just say increased opportunities for town services and other, or something like that.
I mean, there was a lot of development being contemplated for the town center between the community center and, potentially a new police station. So there is, we had talked about a child care center with 100 children, so I think there's a reason for that.
But are they municipal services?
Not the child care center, but the police station and the community center.
Yeah, I mean, public sewer may support existing town operations. I mean, we could just drop to support increased development.
Yeah, I was just about to say,
Yep.
just explore expanding public sewer to town center campus, period.
Okay, yep, okay, that's good.
Okay, moving on to strategy 3.2.3. There was an addition, I think it was a further clarification, it was a move from somewhere else, but this is related to the public school program and facilities. And there was a letter C that's been added that says explore eligibility for the Safe Routes to School program and related funding sources to provide safe sidewalk routes to the town's public schools.
Fine.
Yeah, let's try to
Yes.
support that.
Okay. And if we drop down to 3.2.4, park facilities, there's some specifics, park improvements that were identified from talking with Parks and Parks Department. And then there was some edits that we received from TPC members about, and letter B, about making public spaces more accessible to people with disabilities. And then there's also the letter F, that's the added recommendation about the Woodbridge Country Club property having recreation opportunities. Any comments on any one of those items?
So B is making public spaces more accessible, that sounds great. And F is the same language we've been copying and pasting in all the other places.
So we got the one about economic, we got the one about preserving natural resources, and one about the recreation.
That's good.
Okay, then moving on to goal 3.3, which is embrace and preserve natural spaces. We didn't receive any comments in this particular section, except for at the very end, right before goal 3.4. But is there any, nobody commented on anything earlier. And the very last one, which is strategy 3.3.5, which is enhance open space preservation tools. There was a comment that was received from a TPZ member that just said possibly consider deleting providing open space is fine unless it becomes a deterrent to ability to develop. And this one, letter F, says maintain zoning regulations that encourage and require open space preservation.
There's actually a bill that's up in the legislature that would delete allowing you to require open space in the subdivision.
And our subdivision regs is
It's
one,
in the subdivision regs, it's not in the zoning regs.
yeah, isn't that the only place where we have a required certain amount of open space? So we'd have to adjust it to be more accurate if we wanted to keep
We
it.
have to be mindful of what may happen in the legislative session.
And this is a carryover from the previous POCD, so.
I'm okay deleting it.
We need to change zoning to subdivision.
Or we can just delete the whole thing. Folks?
Yeah, I
thinking.
think we should either, I mean, we could say examine zoning regulations, but I think it makes more sense to delete it. Because if anything's gonna change, it's not going to be increasing that.
But it's not in zoning, it's in subdivision.
Yeah,
Oh, that's right.
Sorry, in subdivision.
Right.
So we'd have to adjust it to say subdivision regulations to be
I could
accurate.
say, explore modifications to subdivision regulations,
That's
blah, blah,
good.
blah. And then, of course, if the state ends up
Then we'll have to,
changing it, you'll have to change them anyway by deleting that at some point in the
Yes.
future. So that would allow you to not be contradictory, since you said maintain, and if you said explore, then you would be doing what the state potentially asked you to do. Makes
Good
sense.
idea.
There are
Okay,
two Fs here.
yep. Okay. And that moves on to goal 3.4.
Sorry, did we agree that we were going to delete that or edit it?
It sounded like people wanted to just explore,
Modifications to the subdivision regulations that encourage or require open space preservation.
Okay,
Yeah, that's what I heard.
okay. Thank you.
yes.
Thank you.
Okay, that was the last comment
okay,
for the goals, strategies, and actions.
well done. Well done, team. Time check, it's 8:26. Robert, what else do you have for us to look at if we had, let's say, 10 or 15 minutes more on this, if our folks?
The next item that we have would be to take a quick look at the summary of the open house that we had on April 6th and some of the comments that we received. That was a document that Chris sent out, that's a technical memorandum. I can pull it up. And,
I have
Well,
some paper copies if
yeah.
anybody wants them.
Can I see one? Okay.
so the beginning of the technical memorandum just kind of gives a summary of the open house and what happened. But then at the end of that document that we gave you, there's a spreadsheet that has all of the comments that were received.
I'll have to look at my computer.
And what we did on this spreadsheet is, so the comment that we received from the participants, and it talks about like the theme area, like on the first page of the spreadsheet was theme area number 1, pursuing responsible growth of housing and diversity. And then, listed there were all, what's in the far left column is a comment that we received. You might recall that the comments were, folks wrote them down on sticky notes and then put them on and so that's that comment. And then what we did is we looked at them and we, in some cases, people were writing comments, but they maybe didn't take a careful look or didn't have time to look at our, the recommendations or goal strategies. So what we did is we aligned what that comment was with associated goal or strategy that we had already included in the plan. And then in the very far right column, it indicates, whether that's already been included, so we're in good shape, because we're already on board, or if it's something that you might want to consider. And what is considered is highlighted in yellow. So if you don't have any overall questions about the format, we can just jump right to that first one on the very first page of the table, which says, with housing, please have all development aligned with aesthetics of our town, no multi-story apartment buildings. And then our recommendation is, or suggestion is, that you could consider more specifics on items for expansion of design and architectural standards for our residential. So this would be something that we would add to theme 1. If you wanted to do that. I mean, we do have some discussion in the business district, about the existing design regulations, the business district, I'm sorry, the Woodbridge Village District design standards that are in the zoning regulations already, right, Chris? And then
Right.
the Architectural Review Board does that. So what this would do is that we would probably add an additional action step, probably somewhere in goal 1, that would talk about consider, expanding or adding design and architectural standards for residential or multifamily residential, into the regulations. So the question, again, it's just a consideration. If you need, more time, we could follow up after I give you like a preview of what they are, and then we could kind of, unless you feel comfortable and you want us to give you a suggestion. The second one, if you want to just go through that real quick, is the comment was no need to accept market rate housing as a means to increase affordable housing. Town can work with nonprofits to build 100% affordable housing. This was, we could consider adding something in one of the housing goals, and then we could say exactly that work with nonprofits and others for 100% affordable housing opportunities.
I would add though, that we have this in our affordable housing plan, working with nonprofits. And without, having 100% affordable housing is not a best practice. It's best to mix it in with mixed income, to have market rate in there in the project. I mean, I think I know what the concern is that if you're only doing affordable housing, just using it, just doing market rate housing, then you're going to have to build a lot of market rate housing in order to get to the number that you need to do. But if you have a nonprofit come in that they could use, a public capital stack, then you can have a development that has a larger number of affordable housing units, and then you could get to a number, much quicker than having to rely on market rate developments that only have 12 to 20%. But that is in our
I think you've already said something that's worth noting, is that this is somewhat in conflict with the existing plan.
Right.
Because you'd prefer to have,
Right.
the town's plan, affordable housing plan, would prefer to have them mixed. So therefore, that's probably why this wasn't in there as a goal, because it's in conflict. And we wouldn't want to add a strategy or an action step to the POCD that's not congruent with the affordable housing plan. So then that might be something that's worth considering, but at this point, we're not proposing to add that action step.
Well, we are considering working with nonprofits in order to accelerate.
Yeah, and that's in there, which
affordable
is not the
housing.
100% aspect.
Yeah, no.
But is that a way to recognize this comment by adding something that is about, consistent with our housing plan, work with nonprofits on affordable housing opportunities, something a little more generic than this specific?
We can kind of look to see if we might be able to make a slight adjustment or something. Okay. If there's not any other specifics, we'll look to see if there's a way we can kind of adjust the language in the affordable housing recommendations.
So I guess, sort of strategically, what is the best way for us to, and I'm guessing folks are just sort of refamiliarizing this document because we saw it a while ago. What is in the, let's say 10 minutes we have left till 8:45? Is that okay for folks? Robert, is that okay on your time?
Yeah.
Or is this homework that we should be?
Maybe it is,
doing?
because it sounds like maybe people didn't review this, knowing how far we might get, so maybe we could plan on another
But I think
meeting.
also, how should we review this, to what end and what action? So these are, you've summarized the different things you saw from the open house.
Right, but the things that are in yellow are things that are not currently clearly addressed in the POCD recommendations. They don't have to be, because, just because somebody commented on it doesn't mean that you necessarily agree with that comment. So that's why we said consider. So, and there's only a half a dozen of items that are highlighted in yellow. And so, what we could do is like maybe focus on this, as everybody looks at it very carefully, and maybe ahead of time, like, do you want to address this item that's highlighted in yellow by adding a recommendation?
It's the green one, it's the green mean at the end.
The green ones were ones that I just had to ask town staff about.
Okay.
And actually, the very last one has already been answered, because there's not new recommendations for that. And then I know that I did talk with Chris about the pool, and I guess that's ongoing.
Well, I mean, I could comment to the couple next yellows, I guess, if you want to just maybe finish this part. In terms
Maybe
of,
I could just review them and you could be thinking, and then we could like circle back, so.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll just kind of mention what each one is. So we talked about the architectural standards possibly for residential or specifically multifamily, possibly 100% affordable through work with nonprofit. The next one was talking about being more specific about zoning changes regarding 4-story apartment buildings in residential zone A. The next one on the next page, there's two on the next page where first one was talking about ADUs and maybe offering tax abatement for registering them as an affordable unit. This was something that could be added specifically as an incentive for ADUs in zoning regulation updates. Because right now we don't mention that, and I'm not 100% sure of the status of that.
Something in the legislature now that
Okay.
would allow ADUs to be counted for affordable units.
But if they're registered or like put into, like with a deed restriction or just any, like
Any
regardless?
ADU,
Okay,
but I mean, it's in there, it hasn't been acted on.
okay. The next one was that somebody mentioned something about co-working spaces in the business district for the self-employed. We could make a specific addition, talking about zoning regulation changes to mention co-working spaces. On the next page,
You don't prohibit them.
no, but it's like a specific calling out if you want, so again, it's not mandatory, but it's just a suggestion. The next one, we're getting into theme area 2, and there was a comment about helping town residents get rid of invasive species. They specifically mentioned some that maybe could be picked up annually by town public works and they could dispose of. So that could be something that could be added to the discussion about town services, to further talk about eradicating invasive species. There was another one about the transfer station and promoting composting, or by having folks bring their compost or to the transfer station, and then they could in return get soil amendments and things like that from the compost that they could take back to their home. We talk about that a little bit in the trash and recycling section, but we could be more specific if desired. There was another one also about the transfer station, about recycling larger things like appliances, toys, and household items. And maybe they could be redistributed to residents or others that may need it. So it's more of like a refresh or a recycling type of, almost like a Goodwill or something like that type of a facility.
There was another one that was about the country club that talked about, it was talking about putting a permanent conservation easement on at least 100 acres of that. So that's actually ongoing, obviously associated with the Country Club West study. And then on the last page under theme 3, there were two. One that was talking about that strategy 3.1.2 should include adding public comment to the TPZ agenda on a regular basis. That's something that could be specifically spelled out. We did make that particular recommendation, we talked about it tonight, we did make it a little bit more generic to kind of talk about what communication as a whole. And then there was the last one is again talking about that public comments at the TPZ meeting could be specifically spelled out, so that's a similar, both of those comments are the same if we want to become more specific about that. Okay, so those are the items that we got from public comment that we can consider, and you could think about them in a little bit more detail, and then we could potentially come back together soon and talk about whether we actually make some slight modifications based on these comments.
Okay. So that's our homework assignment.
Should we send comments to Chris at a time?
That may help, like,
Process.
get that go faster, and
Yeah.
now that you've seen them and you have this document, if you want to, like, in advance of another meeting, you could, like, say yay or nay, or
Right.
maybe give a suggestion.
And that at least could streamline the ones that we all agree with, great. The ones that we have more
What I-
conversation, we will need more conversation on.
And what I could do is that now that we went through the document with the goal strategies and actions, I'm not obviously going to update that with all your comments and give you a new one. And then maybe what I could do is like just the comments that were in there would be connecting with these comments, and we could just talk about them. Like here's one of the comments that we got from the public, and this is where we would potentially add this or make an amendment. So that could be specifically called out, and I could include any TPZ member comments that we received in advance.
Okay.
Okay. And then the last thing that we're not going to talk about today, but the last item is that we then need to talk about the future land use section of the document. We sent that to you. We have both the text as well as the map, and there's two versions of the map, and so that's obviously something we need to lock down so we can prepare that document.
Can we get that in like a Word document so we could make comments and make changes? I mean, or comments and do some red lines for your consideration?
Sure, I can send that to Chris. I did have just one last thing just to let you know, because I know that, time has been going by and all that, but I wanted to let you know that on our end, we have been, actively working on writing the plan and putting it together so that we're, very ready once, you kind of confirm these last couple of items.
It's due now, right, Robert?
We've already
We
passed
extended
that,
it.
and yes, the town administration did send an extension, although it's called something slightly different, but they sent a notice of expired POCD in with information about that, the process is ongoing.
Is there a new deadline as a result of that?
No. It's not like a new deadline. They're comfortable that, you're making the progress. But it's just if there's a grant application or something like that going in. So, we have, I have a couple copies I can pen them out, but we have kind of like an initial cover and kind of like the colors that we're planning. And then what's on the screen right now is just the table of contents that there would be an introduction section that kind of talks about the process, what is a POCD, and some of the community engagement. We then have a pretty lengthy Woodbridge Today section that goes through all the stuff from the community profile and existing conditions, where it summarizes all the the data, the demographics, economics, business. Then we, go through and talk about all those the town facilities and services, and then it goes through the natural resources and sustainability and all that. It's actually, because your existing document was very robust on that, we pulled a lot of that and then put it all into this location, so it's a very robust chapter. And it is written and ready to share with you, but we want to wait until we share the whole draft with you. Then there would be the community vision and theme areas chapter, which would just simply be a vision statement repeated with the theme areas, so it's just like a page or so. And then we go into the fourth chapter, which would be the theme areas, which would be each one of the theme areas with associated goals, strategies, and actions, but with expanded text. There would be text about that theme that you've already seen, but then each one of the goals will have a short paragraph underneath that are kind of connecting it with some of the data or other comments, and then the actual goals, strategies, and actions would be laid out. Chapter 5 will be the future land use chapter, and that's what we're going to be talking about soon. We've shared the map or drafts, and then we're going to share the Word document for you, as Commissioner Hunter has asked, and we can get some edits from you on that. And then the very last chapter will be the consistency with state and regional plans, where we'll have a summary of those and how you're consistent, which we've already discussed, and then we'll actually be very specific with the strategies that you have in your plan that are meeting the state and regional plans requirements. Okay.
And do we need another meeting? Which we don't have to decide right now, but I'm sort of flagging, again, to keep us on track for release.
I mean, based on what we just said, we do need to come back together for another meeting, just to wrap up all these final pieces.
Our next regular meeting is June 5th.
June 2nd.
2nd.
Just that one, May 5th.
Yeah.
June 7th. Second.
June 2nd.
Okay. It's a busy one.
A week from Monday, right? Yeah. Robert, you estimate how long it would take to do the one more meeting? If we email you some of our ideas?
Yeah, I mean, that would help, and we would be able to go through that pretty quickly, and then, the future land use, as long as you review that in advance, you could probably go through that fairly quickly, so probably an hour, I would say. If you have a busy agenda on the 2nd, then probably sometime right after that, like a week or so after that, we can have another special meeting.
That's probably better.
Okay.
Well, your opinion counts. What do you guys think?
Are you guys okay meeting the week of the 9th or the week of the 16th? Sounds like we want another special meeting. We don't have to decide on the date, but we're going to aim for mid-June for a special meeting.
Right.
But in the meantime, we're going to provide comments individually to Chris, who will compile them and send them to you on the technical memorandum and the highlighted yellow. I counted 11 highlighted.
Okay, so it's under yeah. And then it'll take me about a week, but I'll send the revised goals, strategies, and actions document back to Chris, and Chris and I will compare notes, and then I'll revise it. And then, like I said, I will include like a comment so that it's lining up with those 11 comments of where we could potentially add something, and then it'll make it easier to say, okay, do we want to add something here? What did you think? And then we can hammer that out.
Okay.
And then your homework, Robert, is to give me dates that you're available so that I can
Okay.
sync them with you.
Yep, that sounds good.
Yep.
Thank you, Robert,
Thank you very
for all
much.
the work and
Well, thank you for all the time we go through all that.
All right, I know a number of folks need to be recused from our next agenda items. So I'll give us 3 minutes for those to change chairs, to Robert, for you to unplug and get yourself situated.
I can be up faster than 3 minutes.
I know, I saw that you were ready to go. So I'd like to bring us back to order. We're still in our work session, and now I'd like to bring up our continued discussion in our work session on the Stephen Mason amendment to the zoning regulations regarding the proposal to repeal the amendments to section 3.2 on opportunity housing that were enacted on December 2nd, 2024. I note that Andrew and Kathy have recused themselves on this topic. And Paul, you are joining us. Did you have a chance to review the video?
All 3 hours and 32 minutes, sir.
Yes, and did everyone else have the opportunity that they had hoped for to review documents, the written comments, and the things we received during the course of the presentation? So we all feel like we have all the materials that we needed? Great, so we're ready to move on. So I know we had a discussion at the end of last session, which you saw, Paul. And I guess the question is, do we want to have some more discussion now? Should we make a formal motion and have a discussion within that motion? I'm happy to either continue our informal discussion or move to a motion to approve, which a motion to, I guess, deny the amendment, which is what I will move.
It would be
Not an amendment,
Yep.
it's a rescission.
It's amending the voting law it's amending the zoning to,
Remove everything.
so it's still,
So it's still an amendment, proposed amendment that came in front of us, that I would deny that amendment, is my motion. But I'm happy to have the discussion informally or have it under a formal motion.
I would second the amendment. Second your motion, excuse me.
So I have moved to deny the Stephen Mason amendment to our zoning regulations that would repeal any amendments we made on December 2nd. So I moved, and it's been seconded. So discussion on what I have just moved.
I had asked Justin to prepare sort of a verified map of the parts of town that actually could be considered under our opportunity housing definition. We received this future land use plan image from SLR, which seems to be pretty high definition. Am I correct that, as we previously discussed, the areas in town where opportunity housing development could be considered for a special exception are those where there is both public water and public sewer? Is that correct?
And before I answer that, I want to make sure, is that document in our record?
No.
No. So I don't think it's something that we can directly consider.
I see. Well, so then just the question is, am I correct that our opportunity housing regulations stipulate that public sewer and public water
Yes,
must both be present?
correct.
Okay.
That's in the opportunity housing zoning, page 80 of the existing regs, point 1, letter B. So any multifamily opportunity housing development proposed under the section 3.4E shall be served by public water and public sewer. So I think the question you're asking is, Yeah, it's like the regs has changed, which we changed last year. It shall be served by public water and public sewer. So it would just be anywhere in Woodbridge where there was public water and public sewer. So whether it's diagrammed or not, that is where it would cover.
I mean, the reason I asked the question is that the major thrust of the concerns that were articulated at our last meeting were that the change to the zoning regulations were zone-wide, and there were anxieties expressed about the zone-wide ramifications, but it sounds to me, this is why I'm asking to just confirm my understanding, that it's really very specific subsection of the zone that is affected.
For now.
Right, so if
Currently,
public
yes.
water and public sewer were expanded, then the zoning regulations would then apply to those expanded.
Expanded areas, correct?
Yes. Yes.
Are you through contemplating?
Yeah, no, I think, I'm sorry, I yield Commissioner Schatz.
So you had a couple of comments. One was, I'm totally sympathetic to those who think notice was poorly given. And I would probably feel the same way. Notice of that meeting was properly given. I don't think we set those rules. Because this is not the first time it's come up. It's come up a number of other times. And we talked about 2-3 years, maybe even during COVID, changing notice regulation, notice filings, because Chris did everything by the book. I mean so I know a couple people thought there was some underhanded way notice was given. I mean, you did it by the book like you do every meeting. It's not your fault that we don't read the register anymore or that it was a holiday. But we have spoken about getting better notice out to residents, which is only fair. That's one. Two, I listened to the comments and then I reread whatever was circulated. And I was disappointed that the original applicant came with studio 1s and 2 bedrooms, and then maybe I forgot, but then some people in the commission were encouraging 3-bedroom ones, which I don't. Maybe it was late and I was tired, but that was disappointing. You made a comment at a prior meeting on a different applicant that we need to listen to residents. So I listened to every comment, I read all the emails. I could be wrong, but I don't remember a single comment in favor of keeping the zoning changes that we made in December, which I take to heart because my personal view is if 40 people spoke out, there was probably 400 or some multiple of people who spoke out. And I voted against changing that regulation in December. I still don't favor it. I think it should go back to where it was and think we need to do a better job of listening to our residents and figuring out how, there's got to be a compromise here, but I'm still not in favor of what we did in December.
Thanks, Paul. 2 quick things. I'll start with the last one. There were, at least by my notes, at least 2 folks who came and spoke in favor of keeping the December 2nd. Yeah. They were Carla Wiley and Steve Lawrence.
You know what? You're a bright guy. You're probably right. I just don't. I listened to that whole thing in the morning, and so I may certainly have missed it. But that'd be 2 out of whatever number.
Sure.
Yeah.
And then earlier on the question, notice the town has since this done a town-wide effort to improve on its website notices of all the meetings and hearings going on all committees, which again is something we are following our rules. We did follow our rules in this one, and
It was done by the book.
yeah,
I totally agree with you. I just think, just because it's by the book, I don't think anybody here tried to sweep this under the rug, right? I just think with technology today, we need to find a better medium than just what we've been doing, because we've evolved and changed over the last 30 years.
and now the town at least is trying this town sort of website-based, notice section of all the notices, I believe, of all the town commissions and activities. Jeff, any additional comments?
I do feel disappointed that the Fountain Street application got conflated with some of the changes, and now they're sort of overlapping each other. Because I do think this is a zone-wide residential ag change at 4 stories, which is a very significant change to the history of Woodbridge now the town's been going. But there's also been little or no building in terms of what we should be doing as a town, and that there's a lot of consensus on in expanding our housing choices. So you have a situation where an application came in for a certain development, the regs changed to reflect that, so there was some, conflation between the two. I will say to people that are very concerned about the changes that already happened, not the proposed changes, but the ones that already happened, it is on a special exception basis, and we will look at each of these on a very, very careful basis to see if it should be built or not. So I'm conflicted on it, Mr. Chairman, a little bit, and how this kind of went down. I will tell you, we do feel this was properly noticed. We're very careful with it. We don't have a town newspaper anymore. People don't read the newspaper, and there was an issue with how the notice happened. I've been on the commission for 10 years. I was shocked that nobody showed up to some of the meetings. In December, nobody came, so I started to think there was an issue. But there has been no building in Woodbridge. There's been no advancement towards trying to work on adding some housing choice, which we need to do. And so I felt that what we did do in December was the right thing to do. Again, I was questioned a little bit about the 4 stories that are a part of that, because that's a pretty big departure. So, Mr. Chairman, I'm a little bit conflicted about it, but I do like to hear what other people on the board are saying. I do appreciate the views that you've been bringing up. They matter to me, and I do appreciate it. And it's a little bit of a tough position to be in, because we went from one thing to another very rapidly and in an expansive way very quickly. I hope that makes sense to somebody. But
Aaron, do you have comments?
I do. I don't know if they're that well thought out. I mean, when the applicant came and we were discussing how to proceed with the original applicant before Fountain Street came, we were discussing how the commission's goal in trying to make the incentive zoning district actually effective to right size it, to acknowledge that there had been no applications, and to look at other communities and what they were doing. So I think we had a robust discussion on that and how we wanted to proceed. And 4 stories is obviously would be a change. But I think there is concern about overdevelopment in Woodbridge. And obviously, and I believe in, maybe there's not a lot of, there's people in the community who don't believe that we will thoughtfully consider any special exceptions. I, as a member of the commission, believe that we will. But I believe that the town needs more housing, and that diverse housing options are important, but that, and that by allowing increased density in appropriate areas and thoughtfully considering them for special exceptions, you can put, so this allows for 96 units as this revised application that's come in under this, you can put some density where it's needed, and you can keep single-family zoning or two-family housing, and certainly open space in other areas, and still achieve the goals that many members of the commission and many members of the town support in increasing housing opportunity and housing access in the town. So I understand that 4 stories seems like a big jump, but I do think that can be a tool to serve both goals, in that you get more housing where it's appropriate, and then you can reserve other areas for other diverse kinds of housing, two-family house, ADUs, condos, what people can bring together. So I guess that would be my, speaking in defense of 4 stories, because I do know that when you're limited in height, it is incredibly expensive to build everywhere now, and it's increasingly hard to make developments, even 100% market rate developments, pencil out. So that's my speaking out in support of the existing zoning.
And so I will add to that I like the characterization of, and I think it goes back to our original version of the opportunity housing section. It was meant as a tool to increase the diversity of housing around the town in the places where it made sense, and those places where there are water and sewer. That tool wasn't as effective as hoped for, in that, going back before our December 4th sort of decision to modify it, and that sort of learned experience from the marketplace and from the development community, and understanding where the development of this type of housing was going. We were informed by the developer, we were informed by our downtown consultant, who has expertise in these matters, and we relied on him both in the lead up to our hearing and at the December 2nd hearing. We were relying on that review by our consultant of what the best practices were and what would actually make this tool that we started more than a year ago, a while ago.
Yes, the planning consultant.
Right,
Yeah.
but our existing
Yeah.
planning consultant has now weighed in on that as part of our December 2nd process. It wasn't just the developer coming to us with these things, it was us bringing those things to our own consultant and getting their views on what
Yes.
is important
Yes.
in making this tool an effective one, and one that might actually yield results, which is what I'm in favor of. I do agree that the special exception process is a real robust process, and will be
It
one
is.
that will require a demonstration that any particular development proposed meets all of the list of the things that are in our special exception thing, which we talked about last time right after the hearing, but it's in the back of our regulations, all the things that you need to go through in a special exception and deciding on it, which include the health, safety, welfare of the public, the location and size of the proposed use, the nature and intensity of the use, the safety intensity of traffic, that's why we get traffic consultants in particular, the scale of the site and the structures, the harmony and appropriateness of the use and the design relation to the general area and adjacent properties. Those are all the factors that we will consider
For any
for any special exception that comes in front of us under these zoning regulations. And because we have that list of criteria that we are bound to follow by our zoning regulations, I'm comfortable in creating a tool that may be more effective in actually delivering some housing, which is then governed by the way we approach our special exceptions. So that's why I'm in favor of keeping our December 2nd rules as they are.
Can you help me understand how if we were to accept the amendment, how that would affect the Fountain Street application? Would also before us?
No.
I understand, okay,
It would,
I would not. Why is that?
Because it came in,
Because it was,
under the
you have to
existing regs,
yeah, examine it under the regs in force when it was submitted. Just a note on the special exception. Other towns, it is a robust process that often takes many meetings of, it ends up being a negotiation between the developer and applicant and planning and zoning board about, with public hearing and all of that, you know, asking, and the exceptions get incredibly detailed. They want, you know, this roof material, they want this height, they want this setback, this,
Aesthetically too, sometimes.
yeah, I mean, that, yeah, 100%, and then that's written into the permit. That's been, you know, that's not every town, but that's been my experience in multiple towns.
Mr. Chairman, can you help me refresh my memory with respect to this? So when the developer came in for Fountain Street, there were more than one solutions to possibly, you know, getting that development approved. And one would be a more limited zoning area. So sometimes people call it spot zoning and people get very upset. I know, so I want you to do it. But please address that so people know like what the pitfalls are with that and why that's, I'm not an attorney. And so,
And I'm not,
I don't think you are either, are you? Are you an attorney?
Kind of personal question.
But can you address that, because that is an issue, you know, and some towns do that stuff.
to be clear, I'm not addressing this as an attorney.
Okay, see that, yeah, all right.
Addressing this
Please help,
as
and Aaron's smiling
another,
too.
a co-commissioner. And
Yeah.
generally speaking, your zoning rules should be generally applicable. They shouldn't be narrowly tailored. And some towns do this routinely.
For like,
to-
so for 5 acres or more, or 10 acres
No,
or
no,
more, it would
town-
then apply within a certain
No, no,
residential.
it's like-
Towns literally say for a development on a street that begins with an S and ends with a Y and then has this specific size between this size and that size, we're gonna let you do this. And it is literally intended for.
Well, I would say that's an overreach, but not if it was like 5 or 10 acres within area.
Yeah, and that was never proposed. It was a discussion of something the applicant said he could propose language that would apply to this.
It's in the
property
minutes that he did
Yeah.
say that he could do that, we just
Yeah.
didn't go that way.
Correct.
No.
Right? Am I correct on that point?
Yeah.
Okay, right?
But so for, again, no, I still find it hard to believe that many residents would support the ability to build an apartment building like that in Res A. Furthermore, what I remember, I don't know who was on the commission, but when NEBCO came and with their whole big expansion, the majority of the commission, before they ever got to a discussion, a vote, shot down, they wanted some steeple, or I forgot what it was, crow's nest that would have exceeded the highest building in town, and it was against the regs, and people were like aghast. And that was in, you'll tell me what zone it was, but that we weren't gonna, that people were against doing that in, right where, in the village district, and now with that, keeping them in place, and now we're gonna allow the building of 4-story apartment buildings that exceed what NEBCO wanted to do originally. It just doesn't, to me, just doesn't pass the smell test. I think it's, I'm so surprised that you guys feel so strongly to the contrary. And again, there has to be a compromise here, but this to me just has an awful feel.
What, I mean, adopting this amendment would allow us to essentially repeat the process that played out when, you know, the attorney for the Fountain Street developer came to us with an application or a suggestion for an amendment to our zoning regulations. And I think what we've heard, I think what we've heard from some members of the town is that they feel that they missed the opportunity to be engaged in that process. And I agree with everything that Paul said with respect to the noticing process and the spirit of the process versus the sort of letter of the requirement. If we adopted this amendment, we could plausibly revisit the question of amending the zoning regulations to promote the kind of changes that would practically allow opportunity housing in Woodbridge, right? I mean, I guess what I'm saying is, I don't see that the town would be set back, years, really just a few months, by adopting this amendment. I mean, it doesn't mean that we can't repeat the process. Is that correct? We can always consider additional changes and amendments to zoning regulations too.
I don't know if there is actually a technical legal challenge for us to keep, to change it, to go back and then, let's just say for the sake of argument that I propose that we literally then bring the exact same thing back. Which to me would actually, again, be another, I don't actually know if you're allowed to keep repeatedly changing your one specific part of your zoning regs over and over again.
I can't imagine why not. I mean, I can't imagine why not.
Well, no, for the developer community, for us to go one way then the other way, then back to the same way, then, I mean, that's not good. I am in favor of keeping the regulations that we went through a process, we deliberated on, we brought in our consultants, we had meaningful discussions about them as a commission, so keeping them, see how they work. I do agree that the presentation from a few weeks ago, raised a lot of wonderful ideas for additional improvements to our zoning regulations to encourage more and diverse housing. I think we should take all of those up in addition. I don't think that requires us to take this one away.
It's made it a little more complicated by the fact that the Fountain Street property is under our existing regs now, so if we do revert, right?
And
That's
this vote
come for
doesn't-
special exception.
This vote is coming for a special exception, and in 2 weeks, we will have a very robust conversation about the merits of that specific application, which I will note originally included 1 3-bedroom and now includes 0 3-bedrooms. So
that's happening regardless of what we do.
regardless, we were, and
So just to
if the
establish
board
that.
decides at the end of that process to restrict the Fountain Street to 3 stories, that is an outcome that is possible, and then the developer can decide whether they want to move forward with that. That's a perfectly valid outcome of the process for that specific application under the current zoning regs.
And our zoning regs as modified provide maximums. It means that people can come in under those as well. So it isn't, doesn't mean that everything is a 4-story development.
Yeah.
That's coming in. And again, to me, it's finding a way to make this opportunity housing tool as effective as possible. And we found a way to do that. And all the 4 stories doesn't bother me at all. In the right place, in the right, sort of with all of those things that we look at in terms of its harmony and appropriateness is designed to the area and its adjacent properties, I can see a 4-story development in a number of places.
Oh boy, I think, I forgot, I don't know if I saw it or maybe I just drove around, but
Excuse me.
I think I look at Bethany and Orange as, as our, sisters, cousins, brothers, whatever. But I think they only allow it, in Orange at least, in the business district. If my memory is right, just driving around. And I don't think in Bethany, I could be wrong again, I don't think it's anywhere.
Correct.
So we're definitely, by keeping this blazing a trail, and again, and with all due respect, we just totally disagree on a 4-bedroom apartment building in Res A.
4-story.
4, so thank you, 4-story, yeah.
And that's fine. Other comments?
we don't get really granular guidance, or we don't provide granular guidance to ourselves about how we will judge some of those qualities about character and intensity, or even traffic. Am I correct in that?
Traffic, we have traffic consultants who provide an understanding of the, the current state of the traffic flowing on whatever road is in front of the proposed development. And they do analysis of time of day and trips and those sorts of things.
They don't come to us and say this would be disqualifying. Is that correct?
No.
I mean, they don't come to us and say this amount of traffic that would be created by this new development violates
give data.
something else in your zoning regulations, right? It's just simply information.
You should just give data.
We can consider it
Yeah.
in our vote.
So hear me, how many cars may come at rush hour in the morning, rush hour evening, whatever we commission, but they don't come and opine on that, because it's all qualitative.
The dwell time, lights and stuff like that, if there's.
Okay, so motion's before us, which
Yep.
you've made, and Aaron in the second. I'm going to come down this evening on the side of maintaining the existing zoning regulations. While I have a lot of concern about that, I think the special exception will afford the town a lot of protection. But there's been no building in the town, and I think this will get some people to come in and give us the opportunity to take a look at these other options. I know this will be unpopular, but I think it's the right thing to do for Woodbridge as it is now.
So, I mean, we're leaving open the possibility of a future amendment, for a future application for an amendment to our zoning regulations, possibly with more specifics. Maybe, rather than just a full repeal, something that incorporates some of the things that Mrs. Morella proposed that we agreed are meritorious, is that correct?
I mean, we talked about updating, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, sorry.
No, we've talked about, updating our zoning regulations more substantively a number of times, at least in my tenure on them.
We went through like a 2 or 3 year period of time, I think, where we were fixing mistakes and errors and omissions with the constant thought for 2 or 3 years that we really need to redo some things.
Yeah.
And I absolutely feel that needs to happen, and that will happen. And I think the town needs to have more attorneys and planners involved in this process. We're a town with 9,000 people, 19 square miles, 3,000 households, and we are sort of a farming community. We border New Haven, we border other areas that are developing, and we have to take these things into consideration as we maintain who Woodbridge was and is, but where we're going to be in the next 5, 10, 15 years. And there's a balance. There won't be consensus. We're all going to be fighting about it. So we just have to realize that's going to happen. But I think what the decision would be, for me, as I said, we'll go with these new regs for now and see what happens in the town, and there'll be fights about each potential development town. But I do appreciate people coming out. We want to be constantly aware of what people are saying. We will adjust our regulations during this process, and I appreciate it. That's my thought, Paul.
You directing it at me?
I saw you.
Again, I just
get
can't
it.
believe we're all educated people. I just can't believe that we're all coming to different conclusions. It's not like it has to be 4 stories or nothing. We can go back to the table and find a compromise that everybody walks away saying, you know what, I don't love it, I can live with it. That's what I was hoping
There
for.
may be no developments that come through that are 3 stories or 4 stories.
No, I get all
You
that.
get that.
And the part about, public water and sewer, that's just where things are now. I mean,
That's a good point, too,
in a
Paul.
day, a week, a
That's
month,
a
a
good
year,
point,
it could
too.
change, and now we're talking about a month. I mean, personally, I just don't like leaving it up to special exception. I like rule. I'm a rule person. That's just how I am. Right? Everybody lives differently. I like to follow rules. I like them set out. I like to know what I'm getting myself into before I start. But I fully respect everyone's opinions. I truly do. All right. For the record, emphatically.
No, and it is always understood that, and this is the discussions and debates that we have here. I made the motion, so you know I'm in favor. Aaron, you're in favor, so should we continue our vote? Paul?
Opposed.
Ben?
I have to say, I'm not allergic to work. I think it would be more work to go back to our prior regulations and to just have another public discussion, even if it means a little more rancor between town members who I think respect each other. I'm in favor of a mulligan here. I think I would vote opposed here.
So you think, or are you doing that?
We need you.
It's official.
It's good. All right.
You know, I registered a couple of times, you know, and over a couple of meetings, my sort of surprise at the way that the Pease Road special exception application was received and considered. And I'm not confident that that special exception process took all of the factors into account that we say we take into account when considering special exceptions. So I also agree just with the statement that Paul made that the special exception doesn't feel quite like enough protection to feel really certain that we will take all of the character, you know, and intensity considerations, or rather that, you know, maybe it's more about how much time we have as this body and how much we're permitted to speak to each other and how much we're permitted to ask for outside research.
Yeah.
It's hard to make some of these decisions
I
in the
couldn't
amount of
agree more.
time.
Those are really good points.
Yeah.
It's almost ridiculous where that you can't talk to people, you can't get an extra information. It becomes very difficult.
Yeah.
And becomes very-
I think, I would say, I don't think that the process was improper. I'm not terribly offended by the outcome per se, but I hear a lot of people in town who are really upset about it, want a more public conversation to talk about how to make changes in a different way to achieve shared goals. So I will vote opposed.
All right, so maybe we've made our decision. Okay. Thank you all for your engagement with the material, your time and effort, Paul for also watching the video, which I know must have been extra painful for you.
You watched it at 1.5, I'm sure.
And
After the fact.
for the seriousness with which we all took the charge before us, so thank you all. I move to adjourn.
Second.
Move to second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, abstentions? Thank you all.